Welcome back to the OPEX podcast where fitness is explained. On today's episode, I had the pleasure with talking to Jeff and Mickey Martin from the BrandX Method. On this episode, me and the guys discuss not only long-term athletic development, but long-term human development. This was a great conversation with Jeff and Mickey, guys. I know you're going to love it. Stay with us. All right, Jeff and Mickey, thank you so much for making time to speak to me today. I really appreciate it. How are you guys doing?
Doing just great.
Great. Thank you.
And you?
My standard answer is lately, listen, white man from a first world country. And by the way, I mean white man in not a race way. I mean as in like the cards that I was given. Like I can't be having any complaints from a first world country, living in a first world country. Any problems I have are really privileges. So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, good perspective.
Yeah. I'm absolutely, every day I'm just like, got to give gratitude, you know? So I stole that from Tony Robbins, really. He was like one day, who doesn't like, or who loves surprises? And everyone's like, yeah, we love surprises. And he goes, no, you don't. You're all liars. Because when there are problems, you say you don't like them. You know? I always found that good. Like, he's like, any problems we have in first world countries are really privileges. Like, as I always say, no one's coming to the village today to burn our houses down or, you know what I mean, take away our crops. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think our lives are doing pretty good. I mean, the three of us are on a Zoom player recorder here, so I think we're doing pretty good for ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So listen, you guys are really passionate about youth development, and that's going to be our conversation for today. So I suppose for the listeners, give us your background and tell us about this BrandX method and how you got into this whole youth development.
So I'll do a short sort of personal background. I grew up in New Jersey. I was one of those kids who played on the street all day with all the kids on the street, all the sports, climbing trees, doing all that sort of thing. Moved to SoCal when I was about 13 years old. Had a love of art, architecture, design, went to school at San Diego State to pursue that passion. And kind of followed that road, art, architecture, industrial design, to designing toys. I wanted to design toys for children. And I've never really thought too hard about where that came from, but I think it could be just my love of the engagement of play and my happy history playing out on the street with kids as a youngster. Yeah. And then when Jeff and I met and got married, he had a long history of being involved in martial arts and sport, and I'll let him go on about that. But we eventually opened a martial arts school, and following that, got very involved in, well, if you need to defend yourself, you have to be physically fit enough to defend yourself or run, right? You've got two options. Defend or run. And in both cases, you've got to last. So that led us into fitness. And I think we can dive deeper on that later. But that's kind of the short version of how, from my angle, this all started.
I grew up in San Diego, California. My folks had
the 49ers?
No, that's San Francisco.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Excuse me. I screwed that up. Sorry. For some reason, that they were in my head. Sorry, I know that. It said the San Diego have the Chargers.
We had the Chargers.
Yeah.
They're gone. They're in LA now. But my folks had a ranch, so I grew up kind of outside, riding horses, being fairly active as a kid. In junior high school, I bought my first weight set and began kind of designing my own I want to be strong workouts. High school, I got into swimming and water polo, played that and did martial arts through college, and then began I coached water polo and swimming a little bit, and really then started working with kids in martial arts. And fast forward.
That was 20 years ago. We started doing that in 1999.
I had through up until 1999, when we opened our own gym, had been working with kids in martial arts while I trained. And then we opened our own martial arts school. And as Vicki said, we, functional fitness kind of was necessary for the kind of self-defense martial arts that we were doing. So we kind of fell into the functional fitness. As far as kids were concerned, there's a two-prong, at least from my angle, there's kind of a two-prong approach of how this happened. One was we found, kind of fell into this functional fitness and doing, these crazy workouts, and the adults who were in our gym, they like looked at me and go like, have you seen yourself when you're doing these things? You don't look right. And they wouldn't do it. But the kids in the martial arts classes, they loved them, and they ate them up. So we kind of guided ourselves, or kind of started implementing in the kids classes. For us, though, we raised 4 boys, and it was really important to me. Like when the kids started getting into middle school area, I started realizing that my kids, even though they were athletic, weren't strong, and they weren't able to do the things that I was able to do when I was a kid. They couldn't climb ropes, they couldn't do pull-ups, they couldn't, all of these things. And so it was important to me to find a way to help my kids become stronger, and kind of that'll feed a little bit further down the road, talking about long-term athletic development. Our approach really was that we wanted to work with our kids, make our kids stronger and faster and more durable, and we didn't really care what sport they went into. So our approach was really this generalist approach of how do we get kids to be, or how do we get our kids, starting off, our kids to be really great athletes. And that kind of was like the two-pronged reason of why we kind of got into the kids area.
So how did you guys meet? So if you're from San Diego and you're from Jersey, they're pretty far apart.
I moved when I was 13 to SoCal, and Jeff is 4th generation, I think. And we met while I was working at a law firm downtown, and he was working for a telephone company. And speaking about, earlier we spoke about fixing things by pounding them.
Yeah.
I was I was kind of a catch-all position, taking care of the systems, and our telephone system was always breaking. And he worked for this company, and the first time I saw him come in, I was sitting at the front desk. I saw him come in, and I just had this feeling about him. I looked at him, I thought he was so handsome. I just got this feeling like I'd known him.
She does wear glasses, just so we're clear.
I got this feeling like I'd known him, and I was at a crossroads in my life at that moment, and it was trying to make some decisions. I'll put that very broadly. Trying to make some decisions about where I was, and so I tried to ignore my instant attraction to him. And he walked up and saw my name tag, which was on the desk, and it so happens that his sister was marrying a young man named Peter Hart, and my last name was Hart. So he used that as an opening line to me. Oh,
you would think.
Miss Hart, my sister. So, and I have, no matter, I was trying so hard to ignore him, but it didn't last.
She shut me down for 6 months.
I didn't. No,
Let's just put it on. Come on.
I had to trap him in an elevator.
Months. She shut me down for 6 months, and I pursued her for 6 months, and she shut me down all the time.
Wait.
And this crossroads in her life, whatever. Okay, whatever.
This is the beginnings of Brand X, people, right here.
Right there. I was smitten from the first time I met her, and pursued her for 6 months while she shut me down. And finally got her to go out with me.
I trapped him in an elevator, and from the 25th floor, empty elevator, just us. And I think he's been flirting with me. I've been flirting back. Nothing's really progressing. So I said, so what do you do for fun? And
because I'm so slick. I'm so clean.
Come on, this is perfect.
Yep, I lift weights.
He said he lifted weights.
Ah, very good, very good.
Wow. Yeah, so there is a history, I guess.
Okay, I'll just go sit down now because.
No problem. No, it's suppose. Listen, it gives us more frame of reference for the rest of our conversation.
You did ask.
I did ask. Listen, that's great. So let's get into Brand X. Let's get into long-term athlete development. When was the light bulb moment? You're like, here, listen, we need to do something about this.
The second we got involved with it, we could see it happening badly everywhere around us.
We lived across the street from a high school, and like from our balcony, like we have a 2-story house, so from our bedroom and from our balcony, we could see the sport field and where PE was being done.
PE.
And
yeah.
And honestly, what we saw was 50 kids out on the football field or on this sporting field, and we just see 10 of them engaged in the activity that they were supposed to be truly engaged. We'd see another maybe 20 that were doing whatever was being told that they were supposed to be doing, but they weren't engaged. And then we'd see 30 kids like wandering aimlessly around the track, putting the time in, and that was shocking. We watched that happen, over and over and over again. And then as our kids kind of approached that time frame, we realized that our kids weren't getting the kind of PE, the kind of physical education that we got when we were growing up. So both of us had PE teachers in elementary school that taught us gymnastics and track and field,
rope climbing,
all of these things,
swinging on monkey bars.
I was exposed to the rings, the trampoline, vaulting, things like that in elementary school, and those things those skills carry over to athleticism and being an athlete later in middle school and high school. And our kids just weren't getting that exposure. And we were watching these PE classes and realizing those kids weren't getting the exposure. Well, let's kind of as we we're introducing functional fitness into our gym, the idea was really kind of bring that athleticism to the kids. If that makes sense. I mean, I'm kind of
that broad athleticism was clearly missing in what was going on in California, at least around 2000 and after. And we, perhaps because of all the litigation, somebody would fall and it was the school's fault and they'd get sued. And so we kept seeing a reduction in even the apparatus that used to be around on a school site. There used to be pull-up bars, and then all of a sudden we didn't want anybody to feel bad, so we couldn't have a pull-up bar because some people wouldn't be able to do pull-ups, and that would be pointed out by the fact that some people could do pull-ups. And we got into this, or have gotten into this, reducing everything to a lowest common denominator within physical education. And so that's where we saw it first, but we also saw it in our martial arts program, where we had kids coming in and we're working with them. And one of the things with martial arts being so complex is that when you're teaching kids, you have to simplify, right? Everything has to be broken down into its very primary elements, and then you teach them in these little segments, and then we put it together. Well, we found over time, and this drop-off that I'm going to discuss has gotten drastic in the last 5 years. But starting around 1999, 2000, we started to see a change in kids' functional abilities. It appeared that they didn't have any movement experience, or they had little movement experience. That trend got worse and worse and worse over time. And of course, that made us much more motivated to, what can we do? How can we fix this? What things do kids need? So we started looking at research and anything we could find about how we could help kids physically sort of fight what we saw happening going on in the schools and what we saw happening in the gym and just their movement patterns. How can we engage? And then the obvious question, what we can scientifically say we can do all these things. And there are all these amazing researchers actually out there that have started programs that weren't successful because they didn't get how to engage kids. They got the science of what needs to be done, but not how to actually implement it to make it workable and have those kids want to continue. So that's been the thing that we've followed this whole time. What is best for kids? And what can we learn and apply in a way that's going to keep them doing it so that we can best have impact?
I think there's 2 points there that I'd like to kind of talk on. One is that idea of what is best for kids. Well, when we started off, it was our kids. And of course, what we were doing was, what we wanted was what was best for our kids, our 4 kids, and then their friends were coming in and doing it with them. And so that kind of that guiding principle, that kind of guiding light of, let's just keep researching, let's keep finding out what's best for the kids, how to best implement, how to best bring out their natural athleticism. Those things naturally kind of just kind of bled through our whole program. Secondly, the other thing that I think is very analogous is what happened in PE in the US is that they started to focus on team sports and ball sports. So instead of teaching physical education in the true sense of like what we think physical education is, they started teaching basketball, soccer, baseball, football, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. So if you have a kid coming in who doesn't have athleticism, doesn't have physical literacy, and then you throw him a ball and say, okay, now we're going to play basketball. He doesn't have the tools to do that. And so he starts to get turned off, not just from basketball, but from the whole idea of being physical, because we're going to introduce one sport after the other. And he doesn't have the tools. So watching this, our idea was, well, we need to be the base. This is kind of the genesis of that. We need to be the base. We need to give kids the athleticism so they can excel at these sports. And I think this is very analogous now to what we see going on with kids and the professionalization of youth sports, where you have 4 and 5-year-olds who are being told, hey, if you don't pick a sport and do that sport only, you won't play in high school and then won't get a scholarship to go to college. So 5-year-old or 6-year-old kids are playing soccer, and that's all they're playing, and they're playing it year round. But they don't have, all of the organizations, everybody is saying, they don't have the tools to do that.
Or the strength,
and they don't have the strength
to fight off inherent injury while moving dynamically on a field. And
it's also being implemented developmentally and inappropriately. So a 6-year-old doesn't even have an idea of positional play. They cannot conceptualize positional play. So that takes place in 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, where they can kind of understand, okay, I'm the goalie, I need to stay in the goalie box. The 6-year-old is just going, well, I've been punished, I've been put over here in the goalie box. And then eventually you find him halfway down the field trying to kick the ball because he doesn't understand and can't understand what is required of that position of being a forward in soccer. So that's just a whole mess. But if we can kind of take a step down the pyramid and go, can we provide a program where kids where we are introducing athleticism, we're introducing play and experimentation and letting them find movement solutions on their own and become athletic kids, then we can find success in whatever athletics we want. And that,
yeah, no, makes total sense. Makes total sense, because long-term leg development and skill acquisition is a massive area I researched this year, particularly skill acquisition. Like I read like 6 books cover to cover. I spoke to Keith Davids already on this podcast, who's like one of the granddaddies of skill acquisition. I speak to Sean Misk all the time, and obviously James Fitzgerald OPEX is like well versed in long-term athlete development. I just want to ask you guys a question though for the listeners. Jeff, you've used the term athleticism and functional fitness a number of times. Could you define what those mean for the listeners? In what you think they mean anyway?
Sure. So I can define functional fitness as, for us, was movements using, or in the workouts and in teaching, using movements that are multi-jointed, that we would find in real life, like you would find in a sporting field. So you find the squat, you find the hinge, you find pressing and throwing and things like that in athletic endeavors or in real life, versus fitness maybe in a gym where you are locked into a machine and you're working a single movement. Early on, like I told you, I found I bought a barbell set myself when I was 13. I got a book, and the book was put out by the U.S. government, and it was called Vigor. And all it showed was how to do cleans, how to do Turkish get-ups,
military presses,
military press, deadlift, squats, all kinds of squats, things like that. So I kind of used this book and implemented my own training program in this manner, all the way through high school into early college. And then probably one of my biggest revelations was I joined a gym when I was in my like 20, and Arthur Jones had just come out with the Nautilus machine, and I started down that path. Like, this is awesome. I'm doing these machines, and what I noticed was I got quite a bit bigger and quite a bit less athletic and less strong. So where
it's probably the leggings you're wearing.
Probably the leggings.
The 80s leggings.
But it was really it's something that really struck me that here I was designing, when I was young, I designed my program around squats, picking stuff up off the ground and pressing stuff. And then when I was in my 20s, started to design my program around the machines and isolation movements. And I found that, like I said, I got bigger. I looked athletic, but my athleticism had dropped, and my strength had significantly dropped.
So you were looking like Tarzan, but playing like Jane.
Exactly. And that made a huge impact on me. Like, I early on understood that, maybe you might, like 25, 26 years old at this point, like, wow, this is not the way to go. And kind of went back to, I'm the only guy in the gym at the squat rack and doing, what I thought were deadlifts at the point in time, which was lean over, pick something up off the ground. But it made that I entered the functional fitness era really with this background from the 70s of going like, well, this is how, the way I got strong was doing these kind of movements. And hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. So, Mickey, I have a question for you now. You said that you guys, looked in deep into some research. Could you maybe expand on like some of the influences that you guys have had in terms of like how you've gone about researching long-term leg development? Like, have you, is it Ballet's work? Is it Kelvin Giles? Is it like Roddy Lloyd over in the UK? Like, who have been sort of the influences on you guys in terms of how you view long-term athlete development?
The people I was going to start with are different, so now you got me thinking of those that you mentioned.
Well, whoever.
But Avery Feigenbaum,
from the NSCA,
for us. His research, Margaret Whitehead on broad physical literacy, big influence for us. And then for me, I'm very much working with young children and very involved with the physical literacy and the play aspect, which lead into, obviously, as a foundation, the long-term athletic development. But so the researchers that for me are primary Jerome and Dorothy Singer, Stuart Brown, very key to our thinking and programming to get kids engaged early and moving playfully and including this broad physical literacy foundation to start things off. So for me, those are the main influencers.
I think that one of the things I'd like to say is, like, LTAD, we have nothing against LTAD as it's implemented, but the goal is different. The goal is to find an athlete, or to develop athletes for specific sports. And our goal was not that. Our goal is long-term, and this is just a phrase actually that's come up with between our researcher, Dan Edelman, James, and us recently. It's just, take the A out. We're long-term development and long-term youth development. The idea is, for us, as we followed that idea of the LTAD, the idea for us was, they're really focusing on making kids an athlete, and generally an athlete in a sport, or this can be applied to the sport. And what we wanted to do was quite a bit more general. Allow the child, or give the child the skills to do whatever he wants to do, but also to pursue that, not just in middle school or high school or college, but to be able to pursue going from one sport to the next, and for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. So we have several examples, but the one like we like to use is our son, because he's our son. Mm-hmm. Our son Duncan started with us really doing this program when he was 5. He did sports sampling when he was in elementary school.
This is Duncan that played rugby and pole vaulted.
Yeah. So you know the story, but he in high school he chose to play rugby and was a starting wingman within 2 or 3 months, not because he knew the sport, but because he had the athleticism and the ability to understand the skills and then go, okay, well, now how do I apply those skills, and was able to apply them. In his senior year, he decided to go out for track, which I thought was fine, but why would you do that? I don't like running. But then he said, I want to pole vault, which is a skill you have to learn. So he learned that, he pole vaulted, and then he made the county finals his first year, and the coaches were like, why haven't you been doing this all along?
They actually came up to us and said, why didn't you get him started earlier?
He didn't want to.
I
know. And then, so now he's at San Diego.
Because exactly the reason why we didn't, damn it.
Right.
Exactly.
So now he's at San Diego State, and when he was at San Diego State, he decided he wanted to go out for the rowing club, and on the way to the rowing club, he was doing something like handstand walking, and someone said, you should go out for cheer. So he's on their, this is his 3rd year, he's on the competition cheer team. He's the captain of the team.
Hilarious.
And actually today he's on his way to cheer at the Holiday Bowl in Frisco, Texas. But tomorrow.
So the idea that and then a couple weeks ago, he was called us up and said, hey, I'm thinking about trying rugby again. And so that's kind of the idea. Like you can have this. The idea is to build this foundation to have a fulfilling life. People ask, why do you have kids work out? Well, it's not really. The idea isn't to have them work out for the same benefits that an adult works out. It's the idea that we can develop these attributes that they can use throughout their life to have a meaningful and fulfilled life, that they can express themselves physically for the rest of their life.
We use the expression explore, express, excel. Sort of that has many layers to it, but it explains sort of the stages of development of a young person, not necessarily somebody who specifically wants to be an athlete. Yeah. And that's also the expansion of, like we said, we take that A out. We're also talking about the psychosocial needs of children, and that's one of the things where play comes in, and experimentation, exploration, adaptation, that not only has a beautiful physical benefit if you get out there and you're trying new things and discovering that how to adjust to differing circumstances. You're also learning how to adjust to the other people who are there voluntarily, who could walk away unless you guys negotiate and cooperate and decide on the same rules. So there's a huge expansion in what we're doing on that side of things that is part of what we call building formidable humans. Yeah. Because we're not just looking at the child as a physical being. We're looking at them as a whole and trying to address all the things. One of our underlying statements is what is best for kids. It's always what is best for kids. And what is best for kids is not just to look at them as a soccer player. It's to look at them broadly. And so that's our goal. So we've got this beautiful physical fitness program specifically designed for children with strength and conditioning, but also including biopsychosocial elements that they need addressed, and in a developmentally appropriate way. And that goes back to some of our learning about, how do kids learn? How do we apply that to keep them engaged, and all those things, those little things that hopefully make it a whole program that we can transfer to others. And that's the most important thing to say today, I think, really, is that our biggest project right now is the creation of a new education. And we're working on that with James Fitzgerald of OPEX. And we've spent really the last 9 months or so deep into how can we expand our education to make sure that we are producing coaches, professional youth coaches, who deliver the best they can to children. Not what's the least amount of information we can give them so you can go out, waive their certificate, get insured, and run a program. We want people to really understand the nuts and bolts and all the things that are important to training children: the physiology, anatomy, the psychosocial aspects, the speaking to children in a positive way, learning resilience, and of course, this broad physical literacy and functional movements done correctly and carefully and in a stepwise manner. So we're really trying to put it all together because we can have the most impact, not just as Jeff and Mickey and their kids and the kids we worked with locally, but we really want to make a broader impact. That's the goal.
So really, it's long-term human development, and you're just using the enhancement of people's athleticism to facilitate, them becoming just the best possible human beings that they can become.
But it all ties together. I mean,
absolutely,
everything we're learning, right?
Well, I have a saying, Mickey. I was saying nothing is in isolation. Everything's connected. Like I know this is the first time us three have talked, but for anyone who's ever listened to any of my podcasts, which is between the OPEX and my own podcast, is well over 200 episodes now. Like, I'm the biggest universal human being in the world. It's just like, I always joke, was like, well, first I got into strength and conditioning, and that led into rehabilitation, and then that went into nutrition, and then that went into functional medicine. And then I got into this whole like human development and spirituality. And then I got into like behavior and psychology, and then you just keep opening up all these doors, and then like it just spits you out the back door, and you just look back and you go, oh my God, there's the universe. It's all connected. It's just like nothing is in isolation. Everything's connected. Everything matters.
It started with the John Rady and Brian Medina and Spark and Brain Rules.
Spark, yeah.
Really the general public starting to understand that the movement and brain activity were intertwined.
Inseparable, yeah.
Right. So they're inseparable. They're not two separate areas. It's the same with play. It's the same with so much of what we're doing, and physical literacy that really can't be separated. And we feel like that has been the way things have been working. People aren't thinking of kids as a whole, and so it's just important for somebody to put that out there.
Just something I want to say to you. I have actually two things that I really want to ask you guys. One is, well, like, I'm obviously here in Ireland, and like our culture is very different to the American culture when it comes to college. So, because I remember when I first went to America, I could not understand the sporting setup in America. So it was all like, I would coach these, because I worked at Mike Boyle, so I'd coach these athletes, and they'd be like, I'm like, who do you play for? My school. I was like, yeah, but who do you play for? And they're like, my school. I was like, because see, in Ireland, you play for your parish or your club, and you're with that club like till the day you die. So you basically like, you like, so in Ireland, for instance, with the Gaelic games here, because that's my background, so hurling and Gaelic football, you'll play with that club, right? So you'll play underage until you're 18. Then when you get to 18, if you're good, you'll play for the senior team. Then, like, when you get to about 35, you won't retire. You'll just play for like the junior old man team. And you'll stay playing on that team till you're about mid-40s if you're any good. And then you get into coaching then, and you're with that club, you know what I mean? So you're involved with sport like right up till and then, so like when I was talking to the kids in Boyles in America, I'd be like, yeah, I play for my high school team. I was like, and then like, what's the goal? Like, well, we'll go to college, and then what's after that? And they're like, well, if I don't make the pros, don't know, that'll be it really. I'm like, so you're gonna stop being active in sport like at about 22, and one question I have for you guys is like you guys are putting forth such a great model here, but like, is it like it's being put into such a broken system already? Because then the other thing too with America is like your college fees are just absolutely ridiculous. So obviously parents are always like, well, if we can get Johnny to get a scholarship, that would really like help. Whereas obviously here in Ireland now, we're a different country. We don't pay for our first degree. So there's never that pressure of like scholarships or anything like that. So my question to you first on this one is like, do you think what you guys are really trying to promote can actually work inside the system of America, given things like scholarships and given things that like, you know, if you don't make it to the pros after like 22, 23, people are like, what's the point in participating in any sport?
I have a couple answers for that. I just recently read an article which was promising, that there are 20 states now in the United States that are offering free college.
Yes, Bernie Sanders will be happy.
Just saw it, and I thought, wow, that's going to make some change. But in addition to that, the idea of working with kids in this broad physical literacy and the way that we engage them, creating memories of activity and sport and movement being positive doesn't go away. If we do it well enough, and we repeat it often enough, right? Through repetition, kids learn. And we can embed that neurology, that movement and athletics and playfulness are positive experiences that doesn't turn off at 21 when they're no longer in a club. Mm-hmm. They still want to pursue it, hopefully. And we're just hitting that moment. We've got a 20-year history, so we've got a lot of 20-year-olds that have graduated our program. They started when they were 5, now they're 20-ish, and we're watching them. What are they doing? Are they becoming couch potatoes, or are they engaging at their colleges? And what we're seeing, is exactly what we had hoped for. That they're able to walk onto any field and do a variety of things. And I cannot imagine that the day they graduate from school, they're going to stop, because they are neurologically set up to always want to move.
Yeah. So you kind of want to make their nervous system crave that activity almost.
Right. So
and
I
suppose again,
I think the importance here is, and we talk about sports specialization for kids when they're young versus broad general athletic training when they're young. And on one side, you have a kid who goes through his whole life who identifies himself as a soccer player.
Yes.
This, what I do is I'm a soccer player, versus a kid who comes in and goes like, what I do is be active. I've got to, I explore, I try out different things. And what we're finding is, we can go from our middle boy Keegan, who was a high level soccer player who stopped playing soccer and, continued down. He does a multitude of things now, and he's pursuing powerlifting at this point. Or we have kids like young man we have in high school right now, in college right now, who's playing football, Grady, who's with us. And when Grady finishes football, well, he has an understanding of physical activity. He can continue to do other things versus saying, well, I didn't make the pros. That's, we contrast that with the kid who played soccer. I have somebody in my family who played soccer all their life, and there was just this discussion. She played in college, just played her last game, and there was this discussion with her grandma and her mom the other day about, well, what is she going to do now? And the answer is, if they have this broad base, that there's no real question. Well, I need to be active because that's what I do.
It's kind of the answer is,
I need to play
anything I want to.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shift in mindset. Again, you guys kind of have answered. I kind of just wanted to ask that question more so for the listeners could hear your response. But I mean, like both you guys have answered this, in that the shift in mindset is, it's not long-term like development for you to be a better American football player or soccer player. It's long-term human development, so that for the rest of your life, you will just like engaging in physical activity, as James would say, it'll just be like breakfast. It's just like, oh, that's what I do. I mean,
exactly what, and he's exactly right. That's exactly what we're looking at. You know, the opposite of that, not the opposite of it, but a kind of a correlate to that is exploring new sports. We were just in Belfast a couple of months ago, and one of the young ladies who's been through our program started when she was 5, come all the way through. She's now at MIT as a freshman. She came over and she did her first internship as a speaker for us on the seminar staff, she did great. But I got an email from her at the end of the summer saying, "Hey, I'm trying out for the lightweight rowing team," and so now she's on their lightweight rowing team there. That is the culmination of what we're trying to accomplish. This, hey, I'm in a new school, I'm in a new environment, I want to try something new, I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
And try it. And you have this, I put the picture up of her in a boat as they were rowing. And, they told me to take it down because she's not allowed to have her picture used in conjunction with the company. But what was really fun was, here she is on the boat with like 5 kids, and she's the only one sitting there with hip hinging, holding her arms or externally rotated on the thing. She's here like this with a completely neutral spine. Everybody else is all rounded and all kind of doing stuff. And you're like, and I put the caption up, pick the brand X student, and
Did you tag Kelly Starrett in that? He'd be proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably send it to him.
I love Kelly. Make a better decision.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to add to this, because we are talking about building formidable humans and the whole.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Formidable humans.
Right? We're talking about that, but it doesn't mean that one thing precludes the other. So they're not mutually exclusive. We can build amazing athletes with this program. We have built amazing athletes with this program. It's just that we can do so much more.
Yeah.
So that it's like, why wouldn't we?
It's as you guys
wouldn't we give them all of it?
As you guys know too, it's that bit of lack of education sometimes on a parent's part where they're like, well, I don't see how that's going to make Johnny better at American football. Do you know, like, you guys probably get that all the time. And again, it goes back to like, but I want like such and such to be good at soccer or this one sport, again, because they don't see how doing all this athleticism will help facilitate that. So again, it comes down to an education thing.
Well, it does.
No, we do have a history of outcomes.
Right. We have a history of outcomes.
Oh, I know you guys do. I'm just saying. Oh, that's not a question or
now our training centers do, which is kind of fun as well. But I think the point is, with the parents, if you can have a discussion with them about, I can make your kid stronger, faster, and more durable. I can help to bulletproof them on the field. I can help to make them faster than their opponents and stronger than their opponents. If you have 2 kids playing soccer and they have equal skills, and one kid is twice as strong as the other kid, who gets the ball when they challenge the ball? If you can have those kind of discussions, like, look, this is important. It's a baseline. If you have a kid who's 12 years old, he's gone to soccer camp every summer, over and over and over to soccer camp, there's diminishing returns. Like, I expose him to soccer camp, and he's only genetically capable of getting so good at soccer. But if I can take that kid over that summer, instead of going to soccer camp, make him twice as strong, well, he's going to instantly be a better soccer player. Kevin Don recently wrote something off of something I said, and he said, you can't express what you don't possess. Strength. If we can have this discussion with parents, that strength is the baseline that makes all other physical skills better, that we can start to make some kind of impact on them. Even the parents that are solely focused on making their kid better at a sport.
How important for you guys is it to get parents more active themselves? Because we know role models are huge, and it's kind of funny, so we're nearly always giving out about like, oh, kids today, they don't play. And then we're kind of saying that while we're tweeting that on our phones. So You know what I mean? So like, I mean, like, you know, adults are like lazy. You know, adults are just as culprit. It's just like, well, where do you think the kids are learning their laziness from?
Unfortunately, that's a difficult piece, because you're right. Parents are feeding their children. Kids are stuck with whatever food they're getting on the table, and they're every day modeling for them how they should live. So the key there is if we can talk to parents, we can try to educate them about how they'll benefit, that their health, their whole being will benefit if they move more, and then just pick the way that they want to move more. And we can introduce them to, you know, broad functional movement, and encourage them to do things they enjoy, so that they want to continue. So we don't want people to, you know, feel like, I want to use the term boot camp, but that's changed so much. But we don't want to have people feel like they've got a drill sergeant over them, because if that's how they view physical activity, they're probably not going to continue. There's an outlier type of personality that loves that, but that's not the majority of people. So we want to make sure when we're talking to parents about it, that they find something movement-based that they actually enjoy. And then they're more likely to continue, and their kids are more likely to see a pattern that they can emulate. But it is tough. I can't say that that's an easy thing. I mean, we know that we're swimming upstream on a lot of these issues, that we're working against societal changes and tech changes, and
I suppose too, like, I mean, if like, you know, you could say too, well, listen, it's more so that if we really work with the kids here, that when they become parents, you know, they'll start facilitating these sort of behaviors and this sort of environment for their kids, and that's how it will go forward in terms of generations, rather than say, well, we're not going to like go to these parents right now who already have their sort of behavior traits. We're kind of getting to their kids, developing this, you know, long-term human development with these kids, instilling this as like a major part of their life, and that when they have their families, well, then it's just going to bleed on into all these generations from here on out. So in that way, in that way, it will grow, you know?
Well, you know, and the other thing, kind of just as a kind of overarchingly, you know, parents who eat well have kids who eat well. Parents who are active have kids who are active. That's the way. That's kind of the way it is. But one of the things we found, and I, you know, you having had a gym, and let's say a parent comes in and they have their kid get involved, and they say, I want to get involved. I should be more active.
Yeah.
And so then they start doing the workouts, coming to the adult class, they do the workouts, and it's miserable. They're out of shape and they're miserable. So now they're getting in the car at the end of their workout and they're complaining about, like, oh my God, this is the most miserable thing I've ever done. I'm not sure I want to expose the child.
It's a great point. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, and you know, really 3 or 4 years ago, our total focus became, like, we did run this gym, but our focus became like, look, we have a crossroads here. What are we going to do? We're going to be about kids. And we, so
love it.
So we started to focus really totally on the kids. And if a parent would come to me, I would say, look, here, this is what I would recommend about eating. This is what I recommend about, you know, working out or being active. And almost always the discussion started with, you know, be active at home, not so, you know, go for a hike, play with the kids in the yard, do something like that first. Then, if, you know, and yes, I'd love to see you in the gym, but let's make some positive things. We were an active family. We hiked, you know, we owned a gym, did all of that, but we hiked on the weekends. You know, I came home, we played, you know, ball in the yards with the kids. We did, you know, things that were just fun. Bike rides and things like that with, you know, we just, that was a natural part of our family and fun, you know, and interestingly for us, when now that we've kind of had this last year and a half talking with James stuff, and I watch his stuff on Instagram, and I'm seeing him kind of, that's the family he has, right? His kids are out in the garage with him, kind of going through a workout with him, but then they're on the bikes and they're playing basketball and they're going for hikes, and it is an active family. His kids can't do anything but become adults who are active kids, who are active adults.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because literally the next thing I was going to say to you guys is, like, I always think about James's daughters, And like I think about like Kelly Starrett's daughters, and I was like, those lucky little feckers.
Yeah, it's true. You know, I mean, the Starettes, you see the same thing. You know, they're taking them on a 2-week water rafting trip down, you know, the Grand Canyon, and then they're mountain biking and stuff. Yes, they're working out with them. Yes, they're involved with sport. All of those kids are, but the important training for these kids is
the way of life.
The way of life that their parents are exposing them to.
Yeah.
When we were recently in the London area for the Functional Fitness Federation's Worlds event, James was there with his family, and we were talking, and I could see his kids in the background right behind he and his wife, Leanne, swinging on some piece of equipment that they had and creating games, physical, playful, explorative games,
Challenges
the entire time. I mean, and so it wasn't, it's already done. It's a done deal. That's what they do for fun. They move, and they're physical, and they're learning, they're getting stronger. They're embedding neurological patterns of movement is great. It can't, if it's done well, it can't be undone. And that's our whole push. You know, we want to do it well, and to make sure that kids are like those kids, just constant movement, smiles on their faces, free to do it, you know, without parents who are helicoptering them the entire time. You know, I as a young mom was accused of being the safety lady, maybe even while I was older. And there's one story where one of our sons was wrestling, and I insisted that he had a helmet because he had all these concussions doing other things. And so I wanted him to have a helmet. And it's this horrible family story that I, you know, was too overprotective. And I think about that a lot. You know, I got to a point where I realized that my instinct for protection was keeping them from exploring and learning movement solutions to movement problems in the way that they really should. And so I literally had to teach myself to turn around and not watch.
They have to fall.
So
kids have to fall.
We bought a trampoline. It was one of those spring-free trampolines where there's no springs and there's stuff all around the edges, and it's like the safest trampoline ever. But, you know, my kids were like doing backflip triples and to see if they could pop out of the edge, and you know, so I was like, okay, I have to turn around. They're out there. I know it's awesome for them, and it's the best thing they can do. But my instincts to protect them, I had to try and tamp those down. So it can be a battle for parents, I think.
Yeah.
But you have to overcome it. It's the thing they need.
You know, it's funny you talk about that too, because I spoke to a really good friend of mine on Saturday, Pat Davidson, Pat's like a PhD in exercise science. He used to teach at Springfield, but he works for himself now in New York. But Pat's a genius. Like, he's like real deep thinker when it comes to everything to do with exercise. But we sort of touched on that topic about the importance of letting kids, like, you know, like go through those experiences and like do, like, you know, like be able to like do the rough and tumble. Because our thing was like, if you don't let them experience that, they're going to use other avenues in their life later on to like kind of replace that missing sensation that they got. So like that could long term end up being a thing in addiction or whatever, because they didn't get a chance to fully like explore those areas or reward pathways of doing something a little bit dangerous, like a flip or to let out that bit of animalistic nature of them. And so like if that gets bottled up, like, and they never get a chance to express it, they may use, again, other like means to try and like express that, like, because it was repressed when it was younger. Because Pat's done a lot of work with like brain and addiction, and he was like, he's looked into that, and he was just saying, he's like, I feel like an old man these days. I was like, why? And he goes, because I see these young kids every day getting off the train inside New York City, and they're always like wrestling and going around. I'm always like, boys. I'm like, calm down. And then Pat was saying there's also a part in his brain going, but I love it. I love the way they're just monkeying around. Because like Pat's just kind of like, I just wish I could still do it, but I can't. So I'm like, boys, relax. But we got into that whole conversation about how important it is to let boys and girls, like, you know, be able to express that animalistic nature. You know, it's very, very important in their development.
Horseplay,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
No
There's,
horse.
there's two things I definitely want you guys to talk about before we wrap up. One is the mechanics of Brand X. So, like, I mean, what does this look like? Like, so what age do we start? What programs are in place? Sort of maybe talk through that. And then if we do have time, I want to touch on PE teachers and physical education. And, like, if I was to say, right, you guys are in charge of physical education in the United States, what does that program look like now? How would you go about that? I know that's probably a whole episode in itself. But so you got two things there. The mechanics of Brand X, like, what are you guys doing from, so from a company standpoint, I see there's online certification courses, live seminars, you're over the world, you have places in Ireland and other places across the world. And then, like, from a mechanic standpoint, what does it look like from day one? If I bring, like, my little 5-year-old, like, to a Brand X facility, what should I expect? And then we can talk about P if we get the chance.
You can take this one.
You can start.
So from a global standpoint, from a corporate standpoint, we're focusing mostly now on education because that's where we can have greatest impact. We want to guide people to be professional youth coaches. Okay. And to do that, we needed to expand our offering, which is we're looking at, we think, February launch of a very expanded course for coaches. And we've got The Art of Growing Up Strong, which is a series of one-day workshops that we're putting up on subject matter that's important to professional youth coaches, but can also be attended by parents and PE teachers. So they will provide, the first one series we're doing is Youth Barbell, because that's an area where we see a lot of craziness. People teaching youngsters poorly how to work with a barbell and not taking into consideration all the developmental things that need to be thought about, in addition to really not just being giving lip service to mechanics, but to actually paying attention to mechanics. Yeah. So we will expand those with things like resilience and play and other current topics. And those are our two main offerings right now, the online courses, and we do have online courses right now, but as I said, we have something bigger and broader coming, and then the Art of Growing Up Strong series. We have training centers around the world, and those are people who are implementing and teaching kids in their communities. Obviously, we want to have the broadest impact, so we've got to train more coaches to get out there and be training kids.
We have one in Dublin, the lab in Bray.
Bray. Yeah, the Dublin area. So there is one in Ireland right now, down in the Bray area, run by Stephen Kinsella, amazing coach. And then we have a couple labs. As you know, we ran a gym for 20 years, and we called that the lab because we did all our R&D there. And at some point we had to say, can we run a gym and a global program at the same time? And our personal lives had diminished to, an hour a week. So we realized that we had to make a change. And so we said, we've got to close that gym so we can focus really on this global thing and have more impact. So that left, where does our R&D occur? Where does that happen if we're not actually doing that all the time? Now, we are going to go around and guest coach and be involved to some extent, but we need labs. So we have 3 or 4 labs, 2 have been announced around the world, where our R&D is going to be ongoing, and Stephen's place in Bray is one of those labs. So so that the magic can keep happening and we can continue to evolve, because we really don't want to be a stagnant program, based on a statement that never changes or addresses what's currently happening. And as we know, what's happening with kids now is constantly changing in their environment. So we really need to be addressing current things and testing everything and making sure it's working, and we're speaking to them in their language, whatever that is today or tomorrow. Now, mechanically, a Brand X program, if you walk in with your 3 to 5-year-old, what you should be seeing is movement exploration. You should be seeing a child who's given the opportunity to explore his environment, to look at movement problems and create solutions. And what I mean by that is perhaps there are some balloons and some soft square boxes scattered around a room. And we're going to tell the kids, get over those boxes any way you can. Pick up a balloon, throw it, kick it, or play with it for 2 minutes. Then for 1 minute, we're going to do floppies, which is like a burpee with no form. Get down all the way to the ground and get back up. Then for 2 minutes, I want you to go back to figuring out ways to get over those boxes and play with those balloons. And then for a minute, we're going to do floppies. So what I'm doing is introducing them to the experience of movement, the BDNF that occurs because they're moving and playing, and allowing them opportunities to explore on their own and learn about how to deal with things. Circumstances, it might be fun for me to jump on that. It might be fun for me to hurdle that. I think I can leap it today. If I back up, I think I can try leaping it. Maybe I'm not feeling good today. I can just crawl over it. All of those are just necessary developmental things that we want to have them experience. But we also want them to have so much fun, they play with balloons, that they want to come back tomorrow. So we do that in a short time period, 20 minutes. So that it's compressed enough that we haven't lost them. At the opposite end of that, and you can look at that and say, okay, that's the very beginning, exploring movement. And then we've got like 8 to 10-year-olds who are learning really how to express movement. They're really learning how to perform it and do it. So we're having them do blocked squats. We're trying to address basic motor patterns that are sometimes lost in today's sedentary world. So we're having them do block squats and say pressing very light objects. So they're going to do something like that. They're going to focus on what to think about in that block squat. Then they're going to prepare for the movement by doing a little warm up, focusing on something, and then they're going to do what we call get ready, which is a complete tip of the hat to Kelly Starrett and Mobility WOD. We want them to get ready for movement, and part of the preparation for movement, right, is to mobilize. So they're going to be doing block squats. We're going to play bottom of the squat dance party with some music, and they're going to be in the bottom of the squat for several minutes without realizing that they've actually mobilized. Mm. And then we're going to have them do a workout, and that's the practice portion. And then we're going to play. And we say play, what we mean is a movement-based game. But we want to allow as much free play within that movement-based game as possible. So we want to allow them some latitude to make their own decisions about the rules. Maybe sometimes we're going to give them part of the rules, and we're going to say, you guys decide on this part, and they can, as a group, determine what's going to happen. Or they can decide maybe what movements they're going to do. But we give them some latitude and some freedom, and not be too structured as part of that free play paradigm that we want to hit on as much as we can. We call that movement play. And then we move into the teens, really looking at excelling. Now we have these kids who've grown up loving movement. They've started to express the movement well. Now we want them to excel at it. We want to add power. We want to add strength. And so we're going to focus. I'm going to let you take how you do that, because I think you can say it more clearly than I can.
The preteen teen class, we're going to really focus on acquisition of absolute strength. Really, this is a time frame where, unlike any other time in your life, you're able to start to you're just biologically capable, basically, of banking strength. So we are focused around the class is focused generally around teaching proper movement pattern, making sure that the movement pattern is right. Beginning to, for kids who are brand new in the class, beginning to introduce load to them, and for kids who've been there, increasing load so they get strong. That would really be the kind of the focus of the practice portion of our class. And then we wanted them to be able to take those movement patterns and the strength and then play with them. So we would give them, maybe at the end of class, say, can make another, like an obstacle course, like go around the obstacle course. I don't care how you get through it. I just want to see that you get through it safely, and want to see that they're capable of taking some of the lessons they learned from the squat, the hinge, and maybe the press, and apply those to their movement solutions as they move through the obstacle course. Or we might say something like,
Get out of the gym.
yeah, I might say get out of the gym.
No, get around
I
the
was
gym.
going to say we've done that too. Like, it's time to get out of the gym and go explore the world. But we do that occasionally as well. But we had one of our great obstacle courses, get around the gym without touching the floor. So we have like balance beams up, racks, rigs, ropes, and they've got you'll see kids jump from the rig to a rope and swing to a pommel horse and land on that. And move, it's fun to watch. But what they're doing is applying all of the lessons they've learned through the program to unique solutions to problems in their environment. Take something like, I want you to throw a medicine ball as far as you can. You just watch kids try to figure out what is the best way I can throw the medicine ball. How can I get the most distance out of it? And they'll each have a different solution than that is unique to them. And those unique solutions are important. That it's not a coach standing next to them saying like, okay, we're going to throw a medicine ball today. I want you to throw it this way, and I want to talk about the points of performance for throwing the medicine ball.
And we do that. We do that in the practice portion.
Sure, but I've told them, I've told them all how to hinge. I've told them all how to brace. We've taught them all how to do those things. So let's just see how they do it, and who is capable of taking the lessons they've learned and applying them in these different ways in their own way. And I think that's an important part of the play section for teenagers versus like kids, is like, let's just let you apply these lessons you've learned in your own unique way. I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong. Just going to let's see how you get through whatever problems we presented at the end of the class. So we'll do that. We also do a lot of now, unfortunately, a lot of rehabbing. I hate that word. I don't want to use that word, but
sad but true.
See kids who come in with, a lot of kids now coming in with, collapsed ankles, weak hips, things like that. So we'll in amongst the play, I often hide the rehab stuff. So like we're going to do kettlebell passes on, barefoot kettlebell passes, single leg kettlebell passes to work on hip strength and hip stability. Do 10 of those each side, and then get through the obstacle course, something like that.
And how do you guys categorize the kids? Like, do you we know that age is a poor metric to use to categorize kids, but usually people do that just more so for convenience and organization. So like, is it like 5 to 8 and then 8 to 12 and then 12 into the teens, or how you guys categorize, or do you go off just maturity?
It's pretty close.
We generally categorize them on the U.S. education system. So it's 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 12,
okay,
13 on up. That being said, that you categorize them like within your class, you categorize them, by age. Then you're a coach, so the kid. So then we're going to talk, exposure. There's exposure age. There's training age. There's, you've seen the kids interact, so you have an idea of their developmental age, and so you got to kind of be able to approach, even though they're categorized in these kind of broad lumped age groups. You've got to, if you want to make the best impact or the biggest impact on each individual kid, have some way of categorizing them, not just by age, but also by not just by chronological age, but biological, developmental age, and
biological training,
so
maturity.
We really are programming doing individualized programming within the class, because we have such, as you pointed out, such a broad difference in movement exposure. Developmentally, are they a child that's very shy? Are they very social? All those things play into how they'll interact and do in that class. And do they have something that has to be rehabbed already? We get 10-year-olds in, or 8-year-olds, 5-year-olds even, all the time, that already have motor pattern development gaps and movement issues. based on those.
And I think in the
So
team,
so
in the
that
team,
we have to individualize attention. So you're going to do this game this way, you're going to do this game this way, and you're going to do this game this way.
Yeah.
You're going to press this amount, you're going to press an ab mat, and you're going to press markers, depending on what those kids need, right? I'm sorry.
Jeff is like trying to get in there 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say in the teen class in preteen class, it becomes critical because I watch people working with kids and they say, well, you're 13 years old, so we're going to put you on this 5x5 strength program. Well, you got one 13-year-old kid who's got a beard and tattoos, and he's clearly capable of withstanding the rigors of that kind of training. And you have another 13-year-old kid who's smooth faced, hasn't started developing yet at all. Those two kids should not be training the same. And just because they're 13 years old or 15 years old does not mean that you need to dump the same stimulus on them. That and in fact, it would be inappropriate in some cases. So as a youth trainer, for us, as a youth trainer, our perspective is you've got to be the best trainer on the planet to be a youth trainer. You need to really not just know how to keep kids safe with movement, how to implement good programming, but you've got to be able to look at kids and be able to define what's an appropriate stimulus for each kid, and how do I best bring along each child. So. Yeah.
And you have a great responsibility.
Yeah, great responsibility. So you have the PYCC is really a big step forward for us in trying to provide the tools necessary for people to have the best impact they can for each individual child.
Yeah. So it's going to be critical, obviously, for the coach to know where each child is on those spectrums. So like, again, as you guys just answered beautifully there, like and anyone who's studied anything to do with sort of long-term human development, as I call it now, is that you can't just go off chronological age. You have to consider biological age, training age, and psychological maturity. So it's kind of know where each child is on those spectrums. So that's a great answer. I don't know how much time you guys have left. If you do have time to touch the PE matter, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because one thing that sort of, as we say here in Ireland, broke my heart when I was listening to your great podcast with Kelly and Juliet on the Ready State, which I'll link in the show notes, was you were speaking to PE teachers, and like it's kind of almost like how like their fellow peers kind of look down on them almost, like, oh, well, you're just a PE teacher, like I teach science, or I teach math, like you're just PE. I mean, like
it isn't even just the teachers, like the administration is that way too. We recently had just a fantastic teacher that's been implementing our program for 5 or 6 years at her elementary school.
Brilliant.
Wanted to bring us down and have us do an in-service for her peers, for PE teachers in her school district, and the administration said there's no money for teacher development for PE teachers. And for us,
yeah,
that's the basis. Like PE, it should be the basis for kids being healthy and ready to learn. So they should be the pinnacle of what's going on. And
I think it may take people at the local levels bringing the scientific information about movement and brain function, exercise and brain function, to administrators to say, hey, look, I know it can help your grades. I know you guys are all focused on grades because it seems that that's the thing. At least in the US, it's very much, we want to compete. Outcomes, right? So we want the kids to be academically successful. And all the science points to, if they are moving and exercising, that's going to happen better. We create those sponges, right?
It's one of the only things that is been clinically proven.
Sleep as well, actually.
Yeah. Well, good.
Recovery. Yeah, and music. Music is also.
Do you know how you sell that? You always start off with this. Okay, let's say I had this pill. That's how you always. That's how you start. I have this pill, and it can increase your grades, make it eradicate depression, to give all the benefits of it. Would you take that pill? Oh yeah, I would. Well, it's called exercise. Here you go. It's called movement.
Yeah.
We post articles. We post articles on our Facebook page all the time. I think we did one this week about a Texas school district that increased PE and saw a decrease in ADHD. There's just mountains and mountains of examples of this, and I think you're right. It's going to almost have to be a groundswell of parents like saying, look, we don't want our kids to not have PE. We don't want our kids to.
And educating administrators who think old school thoughts. There's so much bad, as I'm sure you're aware, physical mythology out there that people still believe. We had to fight with a troll recently on our website about an old.
We didn't have to.
Mythology.
It was just fun.
About weight training in children and dwarves and things. So we.
Does
your child lift their school bag off the ground? Yeah. Well, there's a deadlift right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Kelly and Juliet have taken a very active role in changing the course of the physical education in their school district. But I think that's really where it has to go to.
Well, Stand Up Kids as an organization is helping with that as well.
Yeah, standupkids.org, which is a great place to get information on the effects of just sitting and not having PE. Like for us, we partially homeschool our kids, so our PE was ours. I think James kind of does the same kind of thing. So, we controlled PE for our kids. But I honestly think it's going to take. I think you're right. It's going to take parents understanding the problems, understanding, hearing from their kids that they've sat all day, that they don't have, and realizing what those problems entail, not just in making it more difficult to learn or not being in an environment ready to learn, but also physically what happens to kids when they just sit for 8 hours and don't have the physical activity. We had, kind of not to go sideways, but I'm going to go sideways here. Like in our town where we just moved out of a small town in California, Ramona, the school board had passed that you weren't allowed to play tag anymore because it was dangerous for kids to play. And then we heard from one of the elementary school teachers that we were working with that her school told the kids that at recess they weren't allowed to run at recess because that was dangerous too. And you're going so far the other way, so far in the wrong direction that at some point somebody's going to swing the other way because
we feel like the pendulum has got to be coming back in this direction soon. But you're right. It's going to take education and parents who are proactive and walking into an administrator and saying, "Here's the evidence. How can you ignore it?"
And my hope is, and our hope is the kid that people who are interested in this, people who are interested in training kids, will get the training. Like go through the PYCC, become advocates for kids being being moved, kids in learning in education being movement based, being PE being movement based versus ball sport based, and when that pendulum swings back, we just have a cohort of people who are ready to step into that void and go like, look, I can come in and help. That's really
I was laughing when you said about that Texas school and ADD or ADHD. And listen, I'm not saying that ADD or ADHD is an actual thing, but I think for a lot of kids too, they don't have ADD or ADHD. They're just being kids. It's just like, oh, your kid is so hyper. Yeah, he's a kid. He's playing.
Yeah.
Or she, I should say as well. She's playing.
We did a webinar today, and was watching the webinar, and afterwards, and here I am. I'm doing this kind of thing, moving around while Mickey's talking, and I go, look, I am that 5-year-old kid that the person said, sit down and be still. I can't sit still. I have to move. That's the way it is.
Are you guys aware of Jeremy Frisch? Do you know who Jeremy Frisch is?
I know the name. Who?
He's
Where's he from?
He's in Clinton, Massachusetts, but like he's massive with youth development, youth training.
Sorry.
Clinton, Massachusetts. I think I got that.
Yeah, he's in Massachusetts, and I visited his facility back in 2015 when I was in Boston, and he's got a really good like Instagram and Facebook, like, and he puts and Twitter. And like on Instagram, he put out loads of videos of what he does with kids. He sets up like all these obstacle courses, and he's just like, he's all about youth development. That's his shtick. Like, so I think he'd be a great guy for you guys to connect with, because like that's just his wheelhouse. And there's also Nicole Rodriguez, who she was actually with previously with Exos. She's now over in Poland, and she's big into athletic development. Like, now she's more she's more towards like specifically athleticism though, for sport, but she's also big on it. But Jeremy definitely, I think, would be a great contact for you guys. He puts out some great stuff, and he just like lives like youth development.
Sounds familiar. We don't talk about a lot else. It's what we think about almost all the time. You know how when you're focused on something that you start to see it all the time, and you can't unsee it. You know, like just human movement in general, walking down the street. Look at that person with collapsed ankles. Oh no, that child can't open their hips. Oh no.
So guys,
what would you do with that athlete?
Before we officially wrap up here, if somebody was to ask you, where can I learn more? So obviously, just with Brand X, tell us where people can find out more. And I know, Mickey, you touched on that you're hoping to have this brand new course available in February. But also, if someone was just asked for just resources, any resources, like what are some of the top resources you'd recommend for people to check out if they wanted to learn more about long-term human development?
For me, I think I touched on the researchers that I really think are key to understanding the singers, Dr. Stuart Brown, Peter Gray, but a recent one that I've been reading up on, a doctor of psychology at San Diego State named Dr. Jean Twenge. She's got some beautiful books on the most recent one, iGen, which is the generation of kids that after about the age of 9 in 2011 had smartphones with full internet access, and the changes socially that are connected with that development, socially and developmentally, and how that bleeds into everything else. Really interesting work by her, and then she's got many books and many articles out. She's a great resource to kind of understand what are we dealing with, what's happening with kids in their lives, in their world, and how different it is from what we may perceive it to be, and what we need to do to make adjustments so we can still be relevant and speak to them in a way that they're going to understand and engage with.
Yeah, it's actually Derek Evely, a previous guest, mentioned that book and that researcher as well. So just one thing, actually, I did mean to ask you guys as well. One thing was, do you see a big difference between the boys and the girls in your program? And like, particularly when the girls are entering their teenage years, do you see a drop off at all? Or like, is that something you see, or is that something within Brand X you don't see because your program's just so good?
We see it some. So there is a percentage of young ladies, and it seems to be associated with the length of their participation in our program. So if they started as a 5-year-old, they're in.
Yeah.
They're just in. But if they started as an 11-year-old, by the time they're 13-ish, it is not uncommon for young ladies to feel external pressure
Yeah.
about what they look like in a mirror or a number on a scale rather than their capacity as a human.
Yeah.
And that often leads them to this terrible decision to stop working out so they don't get bulky, as if that's a thing without trying that happens. But for some reason they think that. They've been taught that. We've actually had parents say, I don't want my daughter to get big. It's hard to restrain how I feel about that if I hear parents say something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's so horrible to teach a child to determine their sense of self and self-worth based on anything so superficial. And but we definitely hear it, and we also have heard little girls, I don't want to get sweaty, and then I'd have to change my clothes before I go to my youth group, so I don't want to look sweaty, I need to look pretty, so I'd rather go home and change and do my makeup before youth group rather than work out.
Yeah.
So yes, we do, but like I said, it is definitely associated with length in the program and sort of buy-in.
Yeah, no, it was something I was just keen to understand, because again, I heard Kelly say this. It was in his podcast with Eric Cressy, and he was just like, youth females are such a underserved. Like, obviously, youth fellas are, youth guys are, but the females even more so. They're just so underserved. It's tragic almost, isn't it? Like, it's just breaks your heart.
How many female state and national powerlifting records did we accumulate? I think we had more female than male. So
that's what you want to hear. That's what I like to hear.
We had over 100 state records with just females.
Yeah.
In our gym. So
we're working on that.
How people
absolutely
could get a hold of us.
Listen, you guys are legends. You're rock stars. But so finally, again, just for the listeners wrapping up here, this is fantastic, guys. I really appreciate your time. For me personally, just as a human being to two other human beings, I really appreciate what you're trying to do in the world. But just give your website again, like the website for Brand X, for the Brand X method. And you were just mentioning your resources there. Sorry for I couldn't. So you mentioned those researchers. You talked about iGen. Was there anyone else that's top of mind awareness, Jeff? Is there anyone that comes to your mind?
I think those are the big ones right now.
Cool.
To really, I think people have to. The problem we're seeing is kids who are sedentary and kids who aren't outside playing, kids who aren't doing it. And I think that these books and these ideas really are things that people should get their head around.
I'll throw one more out there. There's a TEDx talk and a little bit from a young man named Charlie Hone, H-O-H-N, and he a lot of the same content as far as the importance of play and movement and all that in really in emotional health. So interesting stuff. And the website is thebrandxmethod.com. Our Instagram is @thebrandxmethod. All of our really current stuff pops up on Instagram. So that's where people, if they just want to see what are you about, scan that page, and they can kind of see also the projects we're involved in there.
And they can get a hold of us at Jeff and Mickey @thebrandxmethod.com.
Yeah, we'd love to engage with people and find out what they're doing. So don't hesitate, email us.
Guys, really appreciate it. Absolute legends. And for everyone listening, everything that was mentioned in the show will be linked up in the show notes, because I go through these episodes like a fine-tooth comb. So, but for everyone listening, thank you for your earbuds today. And as I've been saying in some episodes lately, you're spoiled people. You're spoiled rotten with all this information. So, so from the three of us, though, I'll talk to everyone soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Talk to everyone soon. Take care.